Our 1967 World Champions, the 8th World Championship for the Cardinals, Red Schoendienst, Bob Gibson, Mike Shannon, Ted Savage, and Tim McCarver. Let me start with our manager. You just heard from Red. Red, what was it about this team that you saw that could potentially be a World Series team?
Well, is this thing on? Yep. I'll tell you why. I seen the guys play in '66 and had a pretty good idea about how they played. And I know John Mabry, this year one time, he asked me, he says, Red, what makes a good manager? And I says, good ball players. So there they are. But anyhow, I've been pretty fortunate in the game, staying around, being with these guys, and guys before that, playing against great ball players years ago. And one guy I got to mention here, he's not here, he's gone, he's passed, is Kurt Flood, our center fielder. He was an outstanding ball player. In fact, he hit over 300 in '67, and he knew how to play the game. In fact, all these guys, this is why I'm here today, is because of the ball players that I had. And I know Gibson used to say, get me some runs.
He always complained about runs.
Somebody said one time,
still does.
We got a run in the first inning. He says, there it is, Bob.
Well, your players had great respect for you too, Red. It was just his third year managing the club. Red was just 44, only 3 years out of retiring as a player, and he led these guys to that Game 7 victory against the Boston Red Sox. Dick Williams was the manager there. And Red mentioned Curt Flood. It was Lou Brock, Curt Flood, Roger Maris in the outfield, Julian Javier, and Dal Maxwell up the middle. Orlando Cepeda, who we'll hear from shortly, the first baseman. And the guy I want to bring next, of course, Tim McCarver, the catcher. Bob Gibson, I think, pitched a little bit. But Mike Shannon, it was your first year as a third baseman, and that turned out pretty well, didn't it?
That's because I took care of Gibson all the time. It was easy. All I did when Gibson pitched was I'd catch the ball from Timmy, and I'd throw it around the infield and throw it by the Gibson. And it worked pretty well, so it wasn't bad at all.
You had a big year, 77 RBIs, second on the club in RBIs, and as a St. Louis kid, you'd been in the '64 World Series also, but what does that mean to you to represent your city at the highest level in the World Series?
A lot of passes. Big pass list for sure. But when you came to the ballpark, you thought you knew everyone, and that's a real problem, a guy playing in his own city. But I was very fortunate. You have to get on a good team. That's what makes a good player, getting on a good team. And I was very fortunate. I was on some good teams. You have to understand about Red Schoendienst. Even today, I think that, and Timmy and I were talking about this, even today, I think he's as good a judge of talent that you have around. And that's one of the most difficult things to do in this business, to understand what ability a player has and then turn him loose. And there are very few people in this business that have that kind of quality, and Red is one of the best ever.
And I must say this about Mike Shannon. We trade for Roger Maris. Orlando Cepeda came over in June of 1966. And Bob Howsam, who was the general manager at the time, he was to leave when Stan took over, of course. But Bob Howsam got Roger Maris for Charlie Smith, a third baseman. And Mike agreed to go to third base. I can't tell you what this meant to our team.
Agreed.
I think I'm the only one that really understood Red. That's why I didn't play a lot. But anyway, Red, I'm going to confess to you something I did back in 1967, which I think you eventually found out and you traded me. But anyway, I'm walking down toward the dugout, down the long hallway, we got leading toward the dugout, and I saw a guy take the pencil, and he went to the scoreboard, and he erased one of the starting guys out, that name that you had put up there, and he put his name up there. Red, I grabbed that same pencil, and I put my name up there. And do you know whose name was up there before mine? Roger Maris. But I did get 2 hits that day, but I also got traded that next week.
Ted Savage. Ted, by the way, a 9-year veteran in Major League Baseball, played parts of 3 seasons with the Cardinals and was part of an outstanding outfield, really an outstanding team from top to bottom.
Ted was with the Cubs earlier that year. And I've got to tell you a story about how good Julian Javier was at second base. Ted Savage, the score was 5-4. It was a 1-run game. 9th inning, 2 outs. Ted was at second base, playing for Leo DeRocher's Cubs. Al Spangler, a left-handed pinch hitter, was the pinch hitter against a right-handed sinker baller, Ron Willis. Tough assignment for Ron. So Spangler singles to center. Now Ted Savage, there are 2 outs. There are 2 outs, so you're getting a good jump off a second. Kurt Flood's shoulder was bothering him all year. So here's the way the play untangled. Line drive from Spangler to center field. Fielded by Flood, who threw to Javier, moving to the outfield. Javier one-hopped me, and we tagged Ted Savage for the last out. No, I'll let you talk about Leo. Leo DeRocher was the manager of the Cubs. He had some things to say about Ted.
And I can truthfully say that I hated Leo, and Leo hated me. So we had a right fielder by the name of Clarence Jones. We called him Big J. 3rd inning, Clarence come in for a fly ball, hit his glove and bounced in, 2 runs scored. 5th inning, he goes toward the line for another fly ball, hit his glove, ball bounced down there on the ground, 2 more runs scored. And I can see Leo now up on the edge of the bank, up at the edge of this dugout. Hey, Savage, get that no-playing SOB out of there. What you say, Skip? He said, get that no-playing so-and-so out of there. So I run out there. Clarence is my roommate, right? And Clarence is standing about 6'5". So I run out there and say, hey, big boy, I got you. Clarence said, get the hell away from me. I ain't going nowhere. I said, what? He said, I ain't going nowhere. Okay, Clarence. I run back in the dugout, and I said, Skip, he won't come out. Savage, he won't come out. He says, Savage, for every minute he stays out there after 5 minutes, it's gonna cost you $100. That's a lot of money in those days. You know? So I run back out there and say, hey, Room, you got to go. Got so-and-so, I ain't going nowhere. You tell Leo to come out here and get me. I run back in the dugout. This is a true story. I said, Skip, he won't come out. Well, you better get that so-and-so out of here. So I ran back out. Instead of going to right field, I went to center field and said, you better get out of here, Clarence, because you're going to have 5 outfielders. I'm not going anywhere.
So we've heard from the manager, the guy that led this team, the right fielder turned third baseman, who, by the way, has great respect for Roger Maris, and I know we could have you talk about him, Mike. Ted Savage, and also Tim McCarver, young catcher, handling or being handled by the pitchers. The obvious face of that team, as we look back, one of the greatest World Series performers in the history of the game of baseball. Twice World Series MVP. In '64, he'd already done it, but he did it again by winning 3 games against the Red Sox that year. They had Carl Yastrzemski, a very good lineup, powerful lineup, one of the greatest performers in World Series history. Let me give you one number. He had 9 starts and he threw 81 innings in 3 World Series that he was a part of. So he averaged 9 innings a start, and he is one of our favorite, and we're so glad that he's here. Bob Gibson. Bob, it's a pleasure to have you here. That season, 1967, ended with you striking out George Scott, Game 7. You guys beat Jim Lonborg, who had a Cy Young season himself for the Red Sox. But that year almost went south for you. In July, on Mike Shannon's birthday in July, Roberto Clemente hit a ball off your leg, and you had to miss, 6 weeks or so. Ended up winning 13 games anyway. But was there a time during that season, Bob, where you weren't sure whether or not you were going to be able to make it back and be ready for September and October baseball?
Well, I made up my mind I was going to pitch before the season was over. And so what I did, we had a guy here who used to play with the ball club named Johnny Lewis. Mm-hmm. And Johnny Lewis was working up in the front office, and I had this cast on. I said, John, I want to go throw off the mound. He says, what are you talking about? I said, well, I just want to toss some balls off the mound, so when they take the cast off, I might be ready to play again. So John says, yeah, that's fine. He looked at me like I was crazy, and I guess I was crazy. And I started throwing off of the mound probably 2 weeks after I put the cast on. After about, I guess it was probably 5-6 weeks, I was throwing the ball really well. And I think it was in Philadelphia, like on September the 6th.
Clincher, right.
In Philadelphia, where I came back and I pitched 5 innings and ready for the World Series.
What did you do on the inside, in your heart and in your mind, to prepare for those great World Series moments that you experienced?
I can't even tell you what I did. I don't know that you can explain it. I hated losing. Mm-hmm. I used to not even let my little girls beat me playing dominoes and stuff. I just, it teaches them a good lesson if you don't let them win. And I just have it in the back of my mind that I wanted to be really, really good at what I did.
I have never said this in public. I have thought it many, many times, that when Bob broke his ankle on a ball hit by Roberto Clemente on July 15th of '67, Nelson Browse took over in the rotation. And Nelson Browse in 14 starts was 10-2, and his earned run average was 1.89 in 14 starts. And lurking in the back, I knew was Bob. There was no way that Bob was going to lose games 1, 4, and 7 that year.
And of course, he didn't. The Cardinals were World Series champions for the 8th time. Let's express our appreciation to Red Shamings, Bob Gibson, Mike Shannon, Ted Savage, and Tim McCarver. Thank you, guys.
I got one more story to tell.